I recently made a TikTok about HR 22, the SAVE Act, explaining what it was and how it was bad and how it's going to disenfranchise a lot of voters in this country, especially women. I got a lot of comments on that video, and a lot of the comments looked like this. Now, Mega Man, I am not singling you out in any way. I'm not trying to fact check you or anything like that. I'm just using your comment to highlight because it's a perfect example. The reason why a lot of people were commenting, could you please show me in the bill what you're talking about? Because what I was explaining about the bill, and when people went and read the bill, good for you for doing that, by the way, but when people went and read the bill, it wasn't jiving with what I was saying the bill said, right? And there was confusion. The reason why there is confusion is because the bill contradicts itself. As I said, it's a silly bill. But the whole point of this bill is to require proof of citizenship before you are able to register to vote, right? And the bill itself, the text of the bill contradicts itself. Let me explain. Here's the problem. Documentary proof of United States citizenship, right? Means all this. The very first one, a form of identification issued consistent with requirements of the Real ID Act of 2005 that indicates the applicant is a citizen of the United States. Real IDs do not indicate that the applicant or cardholder is a citizen of the United States. I live in California. I have a Real ID. Nowhere on there does it say U.S. citizen. Doesn't. Example number 2 of why Real IDs won't work, they're not exclusive to citizens. A non-citizen permanent resident of the United States can have a Real ID, but they're not a U.S. citizen. Example number 3 of why a Real ID is not proof of U.S. citizenship. You can't travel internationally with them. You can't cross the Mexico border, and if you fly internationally, you still need to bring a passport. If you just show up to the airport with a Real ID, you ain't getting back in. That's not proof of citizenship. Normally, I would say don't take my word for it. Go try to catch a flight with just a Real ID, but don't do that. That'll be a very expensive plane ticket that you don't get to use. Also, Google the Real ID Modernization Act of 2017, signed by President Trump. And what that did, among other things, is remove the requirement to provide a social security number when applying for a Real ID. And let's go back to the California rules. Can a California driver's license with Real ID be used as proof of U.S. citizenship? No. Although the Department of Motor Vehicles has a list of Real ID documents that include birth certificate, passport, and permanent residence card for the agency purposes, those are considered proof of identity rather than proof of citizenship. Real ID is available not only to U.S. citizens, but to non-citizen permanent residents, holders of a green card, and those with temporary legal status. For non-citizens, the Real ID certification is valid only as long as the holder is legally in the United States, right? So you can be here legally, green card or otherwise, but you're not a citizen. So the whole point of this bill is to prove that you are a U.S. citizen in order to vote. So because a Real ID will not be sufficient for proving citizenship, that's why I said a passport will be necessary. Because if you just present your driver's license as your photo ID of who you are, and then you bring your accompanying birth certificate as proof of citizenship, for anybody who's changed their names, women specifically who have gotten married and taken their husband's name, those names on those forms of identification will not suffice to let you register to vote. Thus, a passport being needed to both be your photo ID and your proof of citizenship. Now, true, yes, this applies to registering to vote, but if anybody wants to change party affiliation, if anybody moves and needs to register in a new state, that's all going to present a problem. So I hope that helps a little bit. Again, Mega Man, I was not singling you out. I was not trying to fact check you. You had a perfectly valid question because the bill contradicts itself, and thus I contradicted the bill, right? So I hope that helps. Thank you all for actually reading the bill and asking these questions. That's how we learn.